Hey everyone, Mark Montgomery here with day 2 of our 8-day course on college admissions. And today we're going to talk about how to choose a college. Now just to recap from last time, we talked a little bit about why you want to go to college. You got to know the answer to the big why before you can actually figure out which college you want to attend. It's also important to remember what we sang last time, remember? You can't always get what you want. Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want. Sing it with me. You can't always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, you might just find, you get what you need. So, what are we doing here? We're trying to articulate what it is you want and need so that you can go out and find those things that you want and need in a college. What we're talking about here is developing a list of criteria. Why criteria? Well, part of the problem with this whole college thing, and we talked a little bit about it last time, is that there's a lot of emotional, fuzzy, undefined things about going to college. And we need, in order to identify the colleges that you really want, you have to identify those things that you really need, right? So defining what it is you want and need will help you define which colleges you really want and which colleges will fulfill those needs. So it's all about developing a list of really good, really solid criteria. But before we go into creating that list of criteria, I want to just acknowledge that there are a lot of aspects to this process that are very irrational, that are very emotional. And those are part of the process as well. We have to honor that. We have to recognize that we sometimes have crazy things that we want in a college, and we have crazy ideas about what college is all about. We all are like that. For example, when I chose my college, I can tell you that I knew that there was all-you-could-eat ice cream in the cafeteria. And that was really important to me, or so it seemed at the time. But, you know, there are things that we all think about when we're choosing something important in our lives, things that really aren't rational. So we're going to just recognize that, put it aside, and now we're going to go into the realm of the rational. So for me, when I'm thinking about criteria, I really think about 7 different categories of criteria, and this will help us to really suss out what's important to us. So what are the categories of criteria? Finances, prestige, academics, activities, student life, what I call atmospherics, and your admissions probabilities. Can you get in? Those are the 7 main categories of criteria, and we're going to knock them off very briefly each one. So the first one is finances. And why do I start with finances first? Because this college decision is really, really, really expensive. And so you better start with finances first and think about your budget. So we're going to think about how to pay for college in another installment of this course. But right now, I want you to really get your head wrapped around that you have to think about the financial aspects of this decision right away from the get-go, and this should be your first number 1 consideration. Again, we'll talk about it more, but think, how much money do you have on hand to pay for college? How much need-based aid do you think you need? How many scholarships do you think you need in order to make all of this work? You need to put this together right from the beginning so that you know what you can spend and you don't get yourself into trouble later on. More on this financial stuff later, but it's a really big, important piece of your criteria, and you should think about it right at the beginning. The second criterion I want to talk about is prestige. And of course, ever since the U.S. News and World Rankings came out in 1983, we know what the best colleges are. We can identify them by number. And that ranking tends to confer a bit of prestige. Now, there are schools that are definitely the high prestige school, the Ivy League, those 8 universities, Stanford, University of Chicago, Johns Hopkins, Vanderbilt. Prestige is definitely something that's in the eye of the beholder, right? This is like brand name. Louis Vuitton, Prada, Chanel, or how about TJ Maxx or Ross Dress for Less? No, those are not the high prestige labels. So we know what those prestige labels are, and we know that they're important. It's very important for you to be honest with yourself about the importance of prestige and how important is it in the process of choosing the right college for you. You just got to throw it out there, and you got to be honest about it. In American society today, it's not really polite to talk about prestige in this way and to really say, well, I really do feel that this particular brand is better than that particular brand, and so I'm going to go out and buy the brand that I think is better. Of course, we do that all the time, right? We do that in our lives, whether it's our shoes or whether it's our other parts of our clothing or whether it's the neighborhoods we live in or the kind of ski equipment we buy or the kinds of vacations we take. I mean, we think about this all the time, right? Prestige is an important factor in our lives. So you need to think honestly about it in the college selection process. The third criterion, academics. Remember, you are thinking about going to a school, not a spa, not a resort, but a school. This is where the academic stuff happens, where the academic stuff hits the fan, so to speak. Anyway, the important thing is you really dig into your own understanding of yourself as an academic, what's important to you in the learning process, what it is you want to learn. Because this is the real stuff that you're buying with all that money you're going to be spending on your education. It's academics. Yeah, tests, homework, problem sets, exams, papers that you have to write, all kinds of stuff. It's not all fun and games, parties, and climbing walls. So what are the aspects of academics that you should be thinking about? Well, you should be thinking about class sizes. You should be thinking about your relationships with your professors and with your peers. Are those relationships going to be only about parties and having fun, or do you want also to have relationships with your peers that are more intellectual and academic? Do you want collaborative, problem-based learning, hands-on learning? Do you want internships to be something that you actually do as part of your academic program? Or how about study abroad? Is that important to you? And if so, where do you want to study and what do you want to study? And then there's one other aspect of academic life that's important, and that's academic research. I tell you, if you go to visit colleges today, everybody's going to emphasize research opportunities. But going back to yesterday's piece of the course, and we're talking about why you want to go to college, maybe academic research is part of your plan about why you're going to college, and maybe it's not. So again, you need to think about what are the elements of academia that you want to take advantage of. What is it that you want to learn? What are the environments that are going to be best for you to learn? And then once you identify these academic elements for yourself, then you can begin to pick the schools that have those elements. The next thing is activities. And these are the things we do extracurricularly, right? These are those fun things we do when we're not in school. So whatever those things are that you're now doing, what are the things that you want to continue when you are in college? What are the things that you would like to try that you've never tried before, but college might be an avenue or a vehicle for you to try those things? It can make the selection process a lot easier. It can really help you in choosing a college and narrowing down your college list if there are activities you really want to continue. So let's take an example, photography. Maybe you already like photography, or maybe you've never tried it before and you'd like to try. Well, then you want to make sure that the college you are investigating has photography possibilities, whether they're in the form of courses that you can take, whether they're in form of facilities that you can take advantage of, equipment that you can have access to. All of these things could be important to you in choosing the right college for you. And the more that you dig into those activities that you really enjoy or that you would like to try, the easier it will be for you to select the college that's right for you. Next, we come to student life. Now, this one is a kind of a fuzzy variable. It's hard to put your hands on and really to understand because we often talk about a school's vibe Or sometimes we talk about different schools having different personalities. Well, it is sometimes hard to get a handle on those personalities, and there are ways that you can do that. But I want you to think about what are the aspects of student life that are important to you. So some of the examples could be conservative versus liberal. Those could be political, those could be social values. It could be about diversity. And diversity, of course, comes in many forms. Not only ethnic diversity, but we could talk about geographic diversity, economic diversity. What does diversity mean to you? And then identify that, and you can go out and look for it. We could also talk about the ratio of men to women and gender issues. We could also talk about religion and spiritual life. How does that impact your choice of which college you want to attend? Then there are things like school spirit. Some schools definitely are more spirited than others, and there's a real campus pride. Some places, not so much. And then there are environments where we find really quirky and unusual and interesting individuals, and other campuses that are really pretty homogenous in terms of their student body. I'm not putting any value on any of these particular things. You have to put the values on these particular things, and you have to state them out loud and put them into your little list here of criteria so that you can make sure that you get the things you want, and maybe it's an opportunity for you to define what you don't want in your campus student life. A couple of other things to think about in terms of campus life, of course, are residential life, the kinds of residential requirements that may be on campus, and the residential opportunities, and of course, food. What kinds of food needs do you have, and identify those and be very clear. Personally, I really want Brussels sprouts. One last thing, fraternities and sororities. In some schools, these are very, very important, so if you're really interested in them, you can find schools where they are definitely the bulwark of the social life. But if you're really not interested in them, there are lots of campuses that just don't have them at all, or where they're very minor part of the social life on campus. Be clear about what it is you want, what it is you need in terms of student life. Next, we come to atmospherics. These are things that students definitely tend to obsess about a lot. And actually, I would just tell you they're probably not that important when you're thinking about buying or going to an academic institution. That would be, to me, a lot more important. However, atmospherics do play a role. So what am I talking about when I say atmospherics? I'm talking about things like the weather. I'm talking about things like geography, urban, rural, suburban, what state, how far away from home. Those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. It also could be something like architecture. I actually had a student one time that said, I want a school with harmonious architecture. Okay, I thought it was a little crazy, but if that's what you want, we can certainly go out and find it, and that can be one of your criteria. Finally, we come to admissions possibilities or probabilities. And yes, these are important to think about. Can you get into this particular school? Gosh, I hope so. We're going to talk more about understanding your admissions possibilities in another installment of this course, but it is important that you think about whether or not you can get into this school, and, as we'll talk about later, whether or not you can afford this school, because your admissions probabilities are also keyed into the cost of the college. So we'll talk more about that later. But admissions probabilities are definitely important, but I don't advocate starting with these. Don't think about this right from the get-go. Think first about the money, then about the academics, because those are the two most important things that you're buying in a school. I thought I was buying harmonious architecture. Admissions probabilities are important, but don't start there. Think about the things you really want, and then think later about whether or not you can get in. So those are the main categories of criteria, and we've whizzed right through them really quickly. I do have other resources for you that I will be sending to you so that you can get into these criteria in a little bit more detail, but this will give you enough to get going. Your next step? Homework time! Oh, yay! I have a little assignment for you that helps you to identify the criteria by which you will choose a college. You need to identify those criteria very clearly. What it is you want, what it is you don't want. And then also you need to categorize your criteria. You need to rank them. So what are the criteria that we call non-negotiable? These are the things that I gotta have, or I'm not even gonna look at this school. Then there are the criteria that would be really, really nice. I really, really want this stuff. This would be really great if I had this. So those are the next level of criteria, the things you really need to have and really want. Then there are the things that, oh, hey, that would be nice. I don't absolutely need it, but it would be nice. Like harmonious architecture. Then there are the criteria that you really don't care about. And that's not I don't know about, that means I don't care one way or another. That means I have thought about this criterion and I have decided, meh, doesn't really matter. If it has it, great. If it doesn't have it, don't really care. Don't know and don't care are not the same thing. Then there are the criteria you really prefer not. I really prefer that my campus not have harmonious architecture. The point being, you'd rather not, so just state it out loud. And then there are the non-negotiable, no way, I ain't doing that, that's not happening. So if it's something that you really don't want, just state it out loud. So this is how you choose a college. You establish criteria. You recognize that there are irrational aspects to this decision-making process, but you put those aside as much as you can and you stick to the realm of the rational, trying to find that list of criteria. Once you have that list, you begin to rank your criteria in order of importance to you, and then, and only then, do you actually go out and start researching colleges and figuring out which colleges are going to be right for you. One last thing I want you to think about is having that conversation too. I think it's important that students and parents do this criteria exercise separately. Just like you did the other one, do them separately and then come together as a family and to discuss what you see as important for your education moving forward. Again, you're not going to agree on everything, but it's important that you start with the criteria separately so that you can start to build a unified list and all start to get on the same page about what college means for you and what kinds of colleges you want and need as defined by the criteria you develop as a team. I also want to recognize that this is a lot of what people hire a consultant to do, is to help with identifying those criteria and sussing them out as a family. Again, you may not always agree. And sometimes it's hard to think about these things in the abstraction. And you know, this is a lot of what we do as consultants, is helping families with those conversations about the criteria. Sometimes for students, for example, these criteria can be very abstract and very unknown, right? They might not know what some of these things really mean. So, or they've not thought it through and had conversations about it. So one of the things consultants like us do is to walk students through that learning process. Parents, if you've already been to college, you kind of know what you think is important about college, and you have an advantage in this conversation that your student might not have. So recognize that your student may need some help in that conversation, and again, that's what we do. Because students, this is your first time. You've never been to college. How do you really know which criteria are more important to you if you haven't really thought it through? So this is a way to get the conversation started, and if you need some help, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can get us on the Facebook if you want to call us or send us an email, learn more about what we do. We'd be delighted to talk to you. But what are we going to do next time? We're going to be talking about how to choose a major. Now that you know how to choose a college, we're going to talk about how to choose a major. Sounds fun? I can't wait! I'll see you soon. Bye!